So ladies and gentlemen, it is news roundup time. We have quite a few new tidbit details and descriptions that are still spilling out of CinemaCon and other interviews with even more press that Rachel Brosnahan is doing. We also have some new Peacemaker footage, Lanterns castings that I need to catch up on, more the Batman 2 concerns, believe it or not, that I just feel like I have to address because obviously since we love the Batman here on this channel, I need to put out my overall thoughts on this bloody situation and more. So go ahead, leave a like on this video if you do go on to enjoy it. Video is timestamped as always because these are long news roundup videos, so if you want to skip around, feel free to do so. And of course, consider subscribing to stay up to date with every update like this. And it turns out that around half of you who come back to each and every video in 2024 weren't subscribed, so maybe double check that red button. I have a few of you, you've heard this message before, maybe you haven't, but just in case, a few of you have said, I thought I had already hit the subscribe button, so maybe you're one of the people who thought you already had. But let's get into the first and most recent quote from Rachel Brosnahan speaking to Collider. Now, future Boba here. Yes, I know people could be like, Boba, have you heard that Robert Pattinson's going to be filming for Dune Messiah? What does this mean for the Batman Part 2? Yes, while I was editing this, literally about to upload it, as I'm in my comfies here, I was like, okay, I need to talk about this because I won't hear the end of it otherwise. So that will be at some point in this video, but back to past Boba. Speaking to Collider about the relationship between Lois and Clark. I love that this is not an origin story. We've seen the origin story done so well a number of different times, but we come into a world that already exists. Lois and Clark are working at the Daily Planet, monsters exist in Metropolis, Lex Luthor has Luthor Corp, so we drop in at this point in their relationship that I've never seen before. They've been together for about 3 months, and they're asking some questions about the future of their relationship. They're not sure if this is just something that was just a really great fling or something that could be forever, and they have really opposite worldviews, and they bump up against each other that way. So it was a really fun way into a familiar story, and I fully agree. I think this has been a topic of speculation for a long time before we got this recent news that's been said a few different ways about Lois and Clark already dating. We've been wondering, hey, have they been dating? Have they been dating a number of months? And this has actually turned out the way that I've been wanting it to, in where they've been together, but not a huge amount of time, but not very, very long. But there's still, at the early stages, but, since they're both fully grown adults, they're at the point of where, hey, we're at the 3-month or so mark now. Is this just a fun fling? Or like, wait, do I want to pursue something a bit more serious with this person? And I love, by the way, the fact that they've only been dating for 3 months. And Clark is like so head over heels over this woman. But like, Lois is like, don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't like him, but like, we've got some things to maybe iron out a little bit before like we really, go the full stretch here. But the fact that they've only been together 3 months, I think solidifies for me, just to say it again here, just in case you haven't heard me talk about this, that Lois does not know that Clark Kent is Superman. Absolutely not. 3 months in, I don't think Clark would have dropped that bomb, but that does mean we're probably going to get the typical kind of reveal at some point in the movie. It'd be pretty bold if they don't do the reveal, and Clark manages to keep that to himself. But we're going to have to wait and see. I doubt that. I think she will learn. But moving on here, when Gunn was talking to Entertainment Tonight, he was talking about, Will Reeve being on set, Jerry Siegel's grandchildren in the Daily Planet, and Gunn says it was the scene when you throw his desk across the room, pointing to David Corendswet, so meaning Superman. So even though that's just such a minute detail, it allows my imagination to spark up with so much. I mean, I want to see David Corendswet in his Superman suit, acting Superman, mad enough to grab Lex Luthor's desk and throw it across the room. Like, what has Lex done that has pissed Superman off enough to do that? Like, also to imagine how much Hoult's Luthor would probably just love that. Like, love how much he's pressed Superman in that moment. Kind of like how Joker gets a kick out of actually pissing off Batman. It's just such a small detail that they let slip that's kind of revealed something about the movie, and where, okay, Superman's going to be in Luthor's office and kind of just flick the desk with his little pinky. Probably a bit more dramatic than that, but that's quite a dramatic scene to look forward to. Now, when talking about the flying scene between Lois and Clark, I believe, Gunn said, I was moved by the scene. I started crying, and Rachel was like, how did it go? And I'm like, it was so beautiful. And it's shot in the movie that's in the trailer that made me cry. John Murphy wrote the score, the love theme for the movie, and so we played the score during the shooting of it. And there was just one moment where I'm like, oh my God, this is the kind of movie that I would have loved to have seen as a kid or a young person. Just that magical cinematic feel that you get when you're sitting in the theater and you feel so happy and you start to love the people around you more than you did. And it's cool to know, I mean, it's not even, well, it's obvious to know that we would have got a love theme of Lois and Clark in the film from John Murphy, but like all of that playing on set, the moment and how it was pulled off made Gunn very emotional. And I think, hopefully with this movie landing, at least, I'm very confident about the castings. I don't know about the story, the writing, this, that, and the other, but I know that Rachel Brosnahan and David Corendswet are going to be electric with their chemistry. I hope that John Murphy's love theme, as being described here, really synchronizes so well with that scene. I mean, to the point of where it makes me tear up as well, like it did Gunn. Just some more fun little tidbits for you there. And speaking of tidbits, as for Krypto and Superman, when being asked why do they need each other in this film, David Corendswet answered it such that, like, Krypto needs Superman. Superman doesn't need Krypto. Like, Krypto's just been, it's sort of a foster situation. Superman is taking care of this dog. He loves dogs, as most people do, but Krypto, as James has described, is the worst dog in the world with superpowers. So he's always destroying the Fortress of Solitude and hunting wildlife and just always getting into trouble, never listening. And although there's a great love and affection between Superman and dog, it's honestly more trouble than it's worth. So yeah, I think we can understand through what Corenswet said, Dan, this has been speculation on the channel for a long time in the DCU discussion series, that yes, all while we've entertained could Krypto have come to Earth with Kal-El, which I wasn't so sure about, but I always opted, like, to me, it feels like Krypto's going to be a part of Kara's story. So I think, yes, Superman, Kal-El, Clark is looking after Krypto for Kara, Millie Alcock's Kara. To me, that feels guaranteed at this point, even though I can't guarantee it. But during the events, I don't know how long the events of the film span, maybe a few days, let's just say a week. Basically, Kara's like, hey, Clark, can you look after Krypto for this amount of time? And so during the events of Gunn's Superman, with all this stuff that Superman's having to deal with, the kaiju, Luthor, he's also literally babysitting Krypto, which is why Krypto's so heavily involved while Kara is away. It just kind of interests me, like, where did Kara go? Why did Clark have to look after Krypto? Is she just like out and about, flying to and fro from Earth? We're gonna have to wait and see. But as I've always said, I can see Kara having arrived on Earth years ago, but having really struggled to get on with her life post Argo City, like struggling with her own identity, seeing her cousin being Superman, having already lived on Earth and its culture his entire life. And she's just really at the perfect place to stumble into the bar for her 21st birthday at the beginning of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And I can just imagine that Clark understands that about his cousin and just kind of facilitates her to, supports her while she needs to do whatever she does, because, really, Kara has a lot of PTSD, if anything, and this is why I think Millie Alcock's going to play a very entertaining and multifaceted Kara who is just trying to acclimate. Now, up next is another quote that really intrigues me about Luthor. So then, after hearing, David Corendswet and Rachel Brosnahan talk about the differences in Lois and Clark's ideologies, Hoult then says this about Luthor's. Lex is kind of in this relentless end goal, and the means he justifies any way possible to get that. So he doesn't care about the consequences of anything he's willing to put on the line to achieve his goals. And he thinks he's right in his pursuit. But the primary thing coming to this was James wrote such a wonderful script. The dialogue is fantastic. The world is rich and fully imagined from this whole universe that you're creating. But then Gunn went on to elaborate and say, I think that Lex believes in scientific inquiry in the same way Superman believes in life. Like, he'll give up anything to learn something new about science. He'll let people die. He'll let anything happen because science is what matters. And taking that next step, even if it's going to destroy the entire planet. He wouldn't have any of the guilt that Oppenheimer had. He would just be like, well, I found that next step. And that's all he cares about. And then Hoult kind of finishes that off by interjecting and saying, that was necessary. So I always love hearing a bit more about Lex. I feel like we do, on top of knowing about the character of Lex Luthor anyway, it's always interesting to get that extra deeper cut of the way Gunn's gonna portray him, or where Hoult's Luthor is at this point in the DC universe. He has an ideology to better humanity that people won't agree with, as Hoult said a while ago, but it's still for the betterment of humanity, but in his strive to do so, he just, whatever he has to do, he would do. And I found the extra nice touch there is what Gunn said about how, like, he wouldn't have any of the guilt that Oppenheimer had, like, with creating something that could be devastating, or like things that have to happen in the midst of creating something for that next step of science. Like, Oppenheimer, as we know, like, pondered about that a lot, but Luthor would be like, it just had to happen. I'm sorry, bro, but it had to happen. So moving on a little bit from Superman now, there's some other things I didn't speak about, such as dynamic duo at CinemaCon. So it was cool to know that they showcased that. And, it's interesting talking about CinemaCon in general with the things that they do choose to show, because it's like, well, if they show a little taste of like, hey, here's what we're working on with Dynamic Duo, and we actually even have something to show here, why not show some other things, is what a lot of other people are asking. And I think it's a valid question to a point. Like, you could have shown maybe a bit of a reveal about Supergirl, but at the same time, maybe you just want to focus on the House of El symbol on Kal-El's chest, then that movie, rather than, bring up Supergirl right now. I don't know, like, what they were really figuring with all of this stuff, but regardless, they decided to show a little bit about Dynamic Duo. And we have Coy Jondro here from Real Rejects saying on Twitter, got a brief glimpse of Dynamic Duo, literally seconds worth, and it looks staggeringly unique. We are talking Spider-Verse levels of new, but with puppetry and CGI and live action blending, stunning. And I believe he also said in his YouTube video, I saw a few people comment this saying, hey, Boba, did you hear him say this? That it was Damian, but I truly believe he misspoke there, because in all the reporting since its inception, it was about Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, so not Damian. But IGN also said that in an extremely quick sizzle reel form was the first footage from Dynamic Duo, the upcoming DC project focused on Robin's Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. There was a quick shot of characters seen from behind that were likely Dick and Jason on a subway. But even these tiny glimpses looked fascinating visually. You could see the mixture of puppetry and animation the filmmakers are using, with lots of shadows incorporated. It was very moody and atmospheric. So all in all here, my takes on this is that it's just everything I thought that Dynamic Duo would be. Like, it's going to take a while to come out. I'm actually surprised that they had something to show at CinemaCon, even though it was incredibly brief. But I think they were desperate to show how excited they are and be like, look how sick this is. Like, the puppetry, animation, live action, like everything that is going into this. Spider-Verse was like, as Coy said, like this, it was like this new cool media. It's like, how cool is that? But now DC could have their chance of, not that this, from the makers of this animation, it's not like this is the first time they're doing something, but bringing something in the Batman world to the silver screen theatrically, this could feel like a new thing to the wider audience out there, and I think they really wanted to scream and advertise that. And it comes at no surprise to me. I just wish I could see it for myself, but I get there was a little taster for those who are attending, and I can't wait to see more. So before we move on to some of the other DC stuff with Lanterns and, well, Peacemaker, we need to talk about the Batman too a little bit. So a couple of things here. Very recently, we actually had a quote come out from none other than Andy Serkis at Indiana Comic Convention of him saying, if, we're going to see Alfred being a badass in the Batman 2, where you can still fight with a walking stick, I am very excited for the new Batman, but I have no idea where Matt Reeves is going to take Alfred this time around. And people were like, because previously in January at another convention, Andy Serkis said, Matt Reeves, told me the story of the Batman 2, and I was so excited for it. So just before we move on to the other concerns, this was like the most recent concern because of the conflicting things he just said. But the way I would look at that, guys, is the first answer he gave was when being asked if, we'll see Alfred being a badass. And despite him answering in January that he was told the story of the Batman 2 and he's so excited for it, I'm sure he just knows more of a broad outline, like this kind of rough idea. And, that rough idea of was enough teasing of a summary from Matt Reeves to get him very excited. Similar, actually, to how we had Robert Pattinson at the Mickey 17 red carpet say that he now finally knows a bit more about the story, like a rough idea of the story, and he said it was really, really cool. Do you remember that? So this doesn't exactly mean that Serkis knows the line-by-line details of what even his own character Alfred will get up to, and thus he kind of says, I have no idea where Matt Reeves is gonna take Alfred this time around, but like a broad idea that he and Pattinson have heard. That's why it sounds like they're conflicting statements, but I honestly don't think, guys, there's any larger conspiracy here with that. So, we need to talk about the whole Robert Pattinson is set to portray Scytale in Dune Messiah. I like any Dune hardcore fans, I'm sorry if I butchered that. And lots of people are like freaking out thinking that the Batman Part 2 is cancelled, and we've got to go through that here. It's so weird because I had a whole part in this video that I had already edited talking about people complaining about no update for the Batman Part 2 at CinemaCon, and I was trying to like reassure people, but now that I'm probably going to have to get rid of that whole part because there's a whole much bigger concerning thing out there. So sorry for the big preface here, but let's get into this. And right off the bat, I will say I'm of a couple of minds about this. I'm not going doom and gloom, closing the curtains on the Batman Part 2, like many people are. And I'm not being foolishly optimistic either in not doing that, believe it or not. Because I know people are like, oh, Boba, of course you'll think everything's fine. Like, no, just hear me out. And then we'll talk about this, right? But first of all, we have all the major trades, an exclusive here, first of all, from Nexus Point News. So they say Nexus Point News can exclusively report that Robert Pattinson is set to portray, is it Scytale or Scytale? I need to look this up beforehand. The news follows Deadline's initial report, that Pattinson was in talks to join the cast of the film in an undisclosed role. Nexus Point News has been tracking this casting for weeks now and can report that a deal is already closed or close to closing, although Deadline reported an offer has not been made. So I guess that's their, exclusive part to this story from Nexus Point News. Now, this is where things are also cool, but where the panic starts to set in. So this character is being described as the film's primary antagonist, and in the novel is known for conspiring with the Guild Navigator Edric. Like, we don't need to go over that because we need to get into the meat of this. First of all, I want to say, awesome. Robert Pattinson in Dune, like the Dune movies. I love the Dune movies. I can't wait for Dune Messiah. This is great. But also primary antagonist could, obviously at the same time mean, Pattinson's going to be very busy. Now, this is where truly people start to freak out because this is what's circulating most of all. They start thinking about, the Batman Part 2. So Dune Messiah is slated to begin shooting in July, and I've double-checked that, and yes, apparently Dune Messiah is set to start filming around the 7th of July, 2025, right? Okay, this summer. They say with Pattinson's involvement in the project, this would prevent him from donning the cape and cowl in the Batman Part 2 until early 2026 at the earliest. Is this true? Is this false? Like, what are my thoughts about this? So I assume, I rate Nexus Point News very, very highly. I assume that they're saying that because if we look to Dune Part 2's shooting, how long did they shoot for? I believe it was roughly a 5 5-month shoot. I believe they started filming around July for Dune Part 2 as well, and they were going on until more or less around December. So obviously with the Batman Part 2, as we've talked about a lot here on the channel, they're looking to film at the end of this year. I've always said probably towards, maybe let's just say, for example's sake, the end of November, because I doubt you're going to start shooting sometime in December to take a little bit of a break over the holidays to then come back in January, if you know what I mean. So November feels like the date they were looking to start shooting the Batman Part 2. So obviously, on Twitter, online, everyone's tagging me saying, Boba, what does this mean for the Batman Part 2? And initially, I was kind of like, well, it means that Pattinson would be filming for a movie that shoots this summer before the Batman Part 2, which intends to film at the end of this year. But then I did a bit more due diligence. I was like, oh, wait, well, to be fair, Dune Part 2 did shoot for around 5 months. That doesn't guarantee that Dune Messiah is going to be 5 months, but these are big, movies. So I was like, okay, you know what? If it does shoot for 5 months again, which we can just say for example's sake, well, that is July 7th, all of July, August, September, October, November. Maybe chock-a-block in time for the Batman Part 2. Now, look, I don't want to come across as naive. This would mean, yes, 5 months could literally take them right up to the rear ass of the Batman Part 2's filming date. Again, we've heard, end of 2025, the Batman Part 2. We've said it's a understandable and reasonable hypothesis that it would be sometime in November. So Pattinson could technically do this. He could. That would be insanely busy for Pattinson. So I do want to admit, all while on paper, you could technically cope there as a fan and be like, well, technically, a 5-month shooting date for Dune Messiah starting towards the beginning of July would take you to November, guys, We also have the writer of the Deadline article, Justin Kroll, saying, little clarity as there seems to be some confusion. This film will shoot this summer, and like The Odyssey, it's an ensemble pick where Pats could shoot over in reasonable time and have it not affect Batman 2 whenever that goes into production. And that's something I forget to mention in what you're going to see from me, past me in just a second, is that despite the primary antagonist description, Robert Pattinson's actual shooting days doesn't mean, or it will be dictated to be, a 5-month period of shooting constantly. Do you know what I mean? That's how scheduling sometimes works. Like, they might try and still have the Batman Part 2 release in November, start filming in November, but have Pattinson's filming for Dune Messiah done so that all of his scenes are filmed, because if you want that actor, he kind of, wants to get that filming done in a small amount of time as possible, so they might try and facilitate that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's going to film all of his primary antagonist roles in 2 weeks, but 5 months? No. So I just wanted to add that little bit in here, just in case you were wondering about that. As a result of that, people are closing the curtain on the Batman Part 2, saying, let's face it, it's over. I still don't want to do that, believe it or not. I understand why people are like that. Oh, look, it's taken this long already. It's so obvious now, this, that, and the other. But I'm like, okay, but why does that mean that they're not going to shoot Part 2? So technically, the Batman 2 could still film at the end of this year if Pattinson's filming for Dune Messiah doesn't actually require the whole 5 months of allotted filming time. But, even if we want to leave some wiggle room for a delay, the reason in my mind as to why there could, let's just entertain this, be another delay all without cancelling the whole movie, I've always, believe it or not, and I've talked about this before, left the door open for, and I'm going to bring it up, we've all heard there's that thing going on with Matt Reeves behind the scenes. I've talked in previous videos that I know what this is to a certain extent of context, not like every little detail or anything like that. But I've always said to people, and you've maybe heard it from other scoopers, that trust me, if you knew what was going on with Matt Reeves, the delays on top of the strikes way back when, this, that, and the other, does contextualize it to such a point where it's like, okay, it actually does make sense as to why it would take a while. But given the reason as to what Matt Reeves has been dealing with, even though we've heard, okay, they're looking to shoot at the end of this year, which still meant that he has time to hand in the script for part 2, despite what people believe right now. Pre-production would have to start around June, July at the very latest, because pre-production takes 5-6 months to achieve. So that means to everyone who was screaming about the part 2 script, well, Matt Reeves probably, with, that provisional date of filming around November 2025, 6 months of pre-production, take that off, 5 months of pre-production, that would take you to June, July this year, for when pre-production would begin its 5-6 month period. So all I'm trying to say in this part of the video is that Matt Reeves still technically has time as of right now, next month, the month after that, to still actually get the script greenlit. However, one thing I have, going back to what I was just saying a second ago before I tangent again, left the door open with, is that what Matt Reeves, this personal thing that he's dealing with behind the scenes that has interrupted progress, and trust me, it would just distract you from getting on with your script, that could and has always, in my mind, had the ability of doing that again. I was obviously thinking, well, I bloody hope not. I think that's what everyone, was saying when you all heard this ambiguous thing that Matt Reeves, this personal thing. You were like, well, hope everything is well, but hope the script, goes along as well. But it was reasonable to be like, well, technically they could, believe it or not, delay it again. Maybe just a little teeny tiny bit. So that's where I'm going with this. Maybe, despite Robert Pattinson saying, for example, at the Mickey 17 red carpet, the premiere, that he heard they should be shooting at the end of the year, that added up to what we've heard this whole time from what Matt Reeves has said. And he's like, well, I bloody hope so. He's made jokes about old Batman, this, that, and the other, even though Robert Pattinson looks great for his age. It might turn out, and this is my optimistic take. I know some of you are like, come on, Boba, it's so over. But why? Think about it this way. Okay, Robert Pattinson has heard that they really are looking to kind of get things together. Maybe they were originally going to do a pre-production 5-6 month period starting in June, July, but maybe something has squished things along just a couple of months more to the point of where maybe pre-production will begin in August, coming on September. So basically, they want to add 5 months, 6 months of pre-production starting as of that date, which would push them into the new year of 2026. So this leaves time for Robert Pattinson to sign on to something like Dune Messiah in this primary antagonist role, shooting around July 7th. Let's just say it shoots for 5 months, like part 2. Yes, that will end sometime in November for Pattinson, freeing him up for the Batman Part 2. Does that mean they could shoot the Batman Part 2 in November or December still? Well, yes, technically. Especially with the context of what Justin Kroll said with regards to how this is an ensemble movie, and Pattinson could very reasonably shoot over, his shoot could be over in reasonable time and not have it affect the Batman 2, despite all the panic online that you're reading right now. But also, as I'm exploring right now, they could just still delay the Batman 2 by a couple of months anyway to just get the ship in order, so to speak. That's maybe the more realistic thing. As to why that would happen, again, it could be the thing that Matt Reeves, that personal thing that's going on. It could be a couple of other things in conjunction with that, dotting the I's and crossing the T's overall, but it just doesn't perfectly line up to what they wanted to do at the end of 2025. So they're like, you know what? We're still going to start pre-production this year, but Rob, you can go do that with Dune and basically free yourself up by the time of early 2026. And that's the best outcome with this, because this is the doom and gloom approach that people are taking. Basically, the Batman is over, the Batman Part 2 is over. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it, because why are people just like, oh, it's over, but why? Tell me why. Is it because of the delay after delay? You're just it's so apparently obvious to you at this point? If that's your reason, then I could kind of see where you're coming from, but that doesn't mean for a fact that it's over. You can still rationally be and call me naive here or blindly hopeful, but I still see a logical way they can move forward with this, as absurd as that sounds to some of you. And not only that, to add more silver lining of hope here, if you will, the 2027 October release date never made sense to me with the current production aim that they were trying to achieve. So with shooting in November, they would have the movie done well before October 2027, to the point of where it felt like they could move it up by a few months if they wanted to in the year of 2027. I will tell you that an early 2026 shooting date is, production timeline-wise, more logical and makes more sense for the October 2027 release date. So to already start filming this year, if anything, was not only on time, but like early. Like you're early to work in that situation. So maybe they're absolutely fine with being like, you know what, like we want Robert Pattinson to like bring his star power to Dune Messiah. Not that Dune Messiah it's going to be a great film regardless, but they're like, hey, there's a win there, and we'll start rolling with the Batman Part 2, early 2026. Reeves, that gives you way more than enough time to do whatever you're doing. But again, there is the caveat of whatever he's dealing with that is personal behind the scenes. Again, I know the subject matter, but I don't know if that's been solved, if it's still ongoing, like this kind of thing. So I have no idea. I'm just adding that into the mix as to why things could have... You get what I'm saying? I'm going round in circles at this point. But I hope my take here is kind of acknowledged the reality of the situation, not lent too deeply into blind faith optimism of, oh, we're getting the Batman 2 no matter what. Like, I'm not that stupid, but I don't want to be so pessimistic to the point of where it's like, oh my God, the amount of delays this has had, it's so over. Obviously, it's like, well, do you know that though? No, you don't know that for a fact. It's just all conjecture and fear that kind of gets reposted. Even if it comes from a genuine place as a hardcore fan, you really want this, but you're spreading the fear, if you know what I mean. But I'm trying to walk the line of the middle where it's like, I don't see why they wouldn't continue with the Batman Part 2 production, other than the conspiracy theories out there. It's like, oh, they want the DCU Batman to take priority and this, that, and the other. Like, I get what you guys are saying to those who are saying that, but it's like, or they can just start shooting early. Like, again, Rob Pattinson's going to be freed up after Dune Messiah before Christmas. He's going to be ready to... He can be ready to shoot the Batman Part 2, but the movie itself shouldn't be delayed. As I've already gone over, that can still be October 2027, even with Pattinson going to Dune Messiah. But I guess we're going to have to watch this space. Those are my thoughts for now. I've been rambling on and on and on and on. Let me know what you think about what I've said. Do you think there is a reasonable rationality to this in terms of what I've got into? Or are you more like, this is the end of the world for the Batman Part 2, it's so over? But I do implore you, like, to genuinely try and think as level-headed as you can there, rather than just jumping off the edge of the cliff. And all while we don't know Robert Pattinson's filming schedule for Dune Messiah, it is true of what Justin Kroll said, the writer of the Deadline article, that, you know, his schedule could be such that despite being the primary antagonist, they get things wrapped up in more than enough time for the original filming date of November 2025. I actually think this is something that people aren't thinking a whole bunch about. Again, I'm not pretending to know the filming schedule, but there's a lot of characters in this movie, and sure, it takes multiple days to film a single scene, and Pattinson's going to be the primary antagonist, reportedly. But, believe it or not, Pattinson can actually do this, and with a decent filming schedule, not have it affect the Batman 2 production. If you know what I mean. Like, while Pattinson's doing this, they could very well be, and should be, by the way, in pre-production for Part 2, and for that to hopefully end, as I've gone on and on and on about, come November, and November is roughly when pre-production ends and actually the film starts shooting. But I'll keep you guys updated on this, but back to Past Boba. Now, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, quite briefly here, unfortunately briefly, but also fortunate that we even have something to talk about. Peacemaker Season 2. We got a little bit of like a max sizzle reel, or HBO, like sizzle reel of things that are coming out, like The Last of Us, and you know how they highlight different shows. You're probably seeing it on screen right now. And they included a tidbit of extra Peacemaker Season 2 footage. We also learned that Season 2 will premiere on August 21st. We knew that it was coming out in August, but now we have an actual day. So that means, you know, we're going to be getting a proper trailer. I mean, you know, you get the first kind of teaser trailer, then maybe an official trailer kind of thing, even not only for movies, but for TV shows. Peacemaker Season 1 had a couple of trailers. So really looking forward to getting into that. And the footage that we have here, some of it is samey from a similar thing that we had before. Do you remember when we had Rick Flag Sr. walking towards the camera? Now we have John Cena in that shirt, by the way, with that smoke behind him. And this was the shirt, you know, of him filming on set of those images being taken down. So I don't see what's so spoilery about this shirt, really. There was technically that mural photo, which maybe gave away a little bit. Now, some people were saying that this looks really fake. Now, I know, like, I mean, you can look this up yourself, that this scene was shot on set. Like, you can see the set photos for yourself. What I would say is, if anything looks fake about this, it would probably be the VFX smoke in the background, and I do admit it does look like a bit too bloomy, overdone, if you know what I mean, if you want to kind of nitpick that extra little bit. But some people are saying, oh, that green screen looks so bad. Like, I have 100% confidence that is not a green screen. It's just the CGI kind of smokiness in the background. That's what got added in. I really want to know what they got up to here, like Team Peacemaker. Why is there an explosion there? Gunn even said here, counting the days until peace on Earth. I just finished the DI and mix on the season premiere yesterday, and wow, it's one of my favorite things ever. Now, we also have Peacemaker like running throughout the woods in like I think, is that like some kind of Hawaiian-y kind of I don't know, but he's holding somebody's handbag, maybe Harcourt's handbag. I don't know. I just realized the next shot is John Cena bursting through the window. Now, I know trailers aren't always cut in order, but no, yeah, that does seem like that's John Cena's, Peacemaker jumping through. And then, obviously, we hear Leota Adebayo, Amanda Waller's daughter, saying, "You're a superhero now." And then some similar footage of Harcourt in the bar, getting her freaking, like, baton out. Peacemaker in his suit. That I don't believe that's the new suit, because we know on the new suit, which it still looks very Peacemaker-y, we have the freaking bird like flipped up the other way. But what I can say here, guys, is even from these glimpses, it's going to be crazy. Like, Peacemaker's just so fun, and just seeing the action of, like, Peacemaker jumping from one rooftop, bursting through the glass there, and probably pop it up to be like, oh shit, and then just crazy action happens. Like, the chaos of that show is just so great. It's so entertaining. It's just simple, like, fun entertainment, and I can't wait to see what they pull out the bag. I really hope that it's as good as Season 1, and I think Season 1 set an incredibly high bar. And now, lastly, for this video, guys, we have like a little bit of a Lanterns news dump here. So Nathan Fillion in Lanterns, as I mentioned in a recent video, we had all suspected, even when Nathan Fillion was first cast as Guy Gardner, and we knew like he would be this character in Superman, that he would likely reprise his role in Lanterns, because in January 2023, Gunn said, there'd be other Lanterns peppered in there, and now we finally have confirmation. And I guess now what really fascinates me is how Guy Gardner fits in with this murder in the American heartland. Even like the tone of the show, like Guy Gardner, even from the Puppy Bowl, like the demeanor of him is very Guy Gardner with how Nathan Fillion played him. I'm really intrigued to see how he plays him in the Superman movie, but we've got the Guy Gardner vibe there. Say what you will about the design, but the vibe is there. But we know Lanterns, albeit in this DCU canon, sharing the same world as Krypto and everything, is going to be a bit more of a, serious tone. But he's in the Lanterns show. Like, so I'm wondering, why does Guy Gardner even appear? Like, how does he first appear? Perhaps it's to consult on the situation at hand. And we know that Porna Jagannathan, who plays Zoe, I believe it is, in the Lanterns show, seemed to imply that Guardians would have some form of presence in the show. I mean, she was talking about, we have Sinestros, we have Guardians. So the fact that she even knows about Guardians, as we've gone over before, like, Guardians is going to be in it some way, shape, or form. I don't think there's going to be Oa. I think the Guardians are going to, like, project themselves to Hal and whatnot to update them about the mission and what they need to do. So maybe it is just what I have suspected for a long time, in how when Gunn first announced the project, describing that even though the story surrounds Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, there would be other Lanterns peppered in there. So obviously Guy here, I wouldn't get your hopes up too high for other Lanterns like Kyle and, Jessica, and we're going to have to wait and see what the status quo is with the Green Lanterns, but never say never, right? But also in other Lanterns news here with casting, we have Chris Coy joining the cast of the show. He will apparently be in a guest starring role as Waylon Sanders, an intelligent survivor or a nervous truck driver. What is it? An intelligent survivor or a nervous truck driver, as reported by the major trades. Age and real name unknown. He's unbound by the laws of nature. Whatever the heck that means. I really don't know, but he's joining the previous list. Let's go over this, because things are built. I feel like soon I'm going to have to do like an everything we know about Lanterns video, because he's joining the previously announced casting. Obviously, Carl Chandler, Aaron Pierre, Hal, and John. But Kelly MacDonald playing Sheriff Kelly. Apparently, Hal Jordan's love interest. Again, reported by major trades, not just scoopers here. We have Garrett Dillahunt, the modern cowboy William Mason, the self-righteous conspiracy-minded man with this ruthless ambition who has also got this charming and calculated facade, as many of us are suspecting, the antagonist of the show. And, you know, he had a suit being fitted to him that he shared to Instagram recently. So it's kind of like, what's going on there? You know, are we getting into Black Candy weird stuff? I know before anyone says it, are we going to really do Dark Blackest Night? Probably not. But, like, who knows what the dark community secrets and ancient horror is, but yeah, it's got to have something to do with William Mason. But then we have Jason Ritter playing Billy Mason, the son of William Mason, even though the real-life actor age gap is really small. A good-looking charmer, apparently, who does his father's bidding, clings to a small-town ego and has everything to lose. I feel like he's going to, like, get into Hal or John's way and probably end up dying, maybe. I don't know. Then we have Porna Jagannathan, who actually told us about Guardians and other things like that. In an interview, she's playing Zoe. I believe she's rumored to be this love interest for Jon Stewart. And also, I think she was actually said to be the wife to William Mason. And then we have Ulrich Thompson as Sinestro, which very much so looking forward to there. My God, you know, if we're getting into Jon Stewart flashbacks with, you know, the characters like Nicole Ari Parker playing Jon Stewart's mother, and then Jasmine Cephas Jones playing a young version of Jon Stewart's mother, you know, it makes me think that maybe the Sinestro thing could be the Hal Jordan flashback side of things. But on top of, like, speaking of flashbacks, we have Sherman Augustus playing Jon Stewart's father, and J. Alphonse Nicholson, I believe, playing a younger version of Jon Stewart's father. So again, like a lot of, like, younger but yet present day parent stuff for Jon Stewart. So let's hope that Hal also gets past stuff. Let's hope that this also somehow includes Carol Ferris, to all of those who are like, what's going on with Carol Ferris? Why is Hal getting involved with Sheriff Kelly? Valid, but maybe, you know, maybe he lost her in the past. Maybe he's a single man ready to mingle. For the past few years. I don't know. But we're going to have to... And hopefully the Sinestro stuff is not only present day, but maybe he visits him, or, like, we get some mentorship stuff in the... I don't know. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But, guys, I think I'm going to shut up now, because I've been going on and on and on in this news roundup, as always. But you know me, I love making them. I love talking. I love rambling like this, nerding out with you guys. Thank you so much for all your support on the channel. I love, like, reading the comments about not only the speculation and the theorizing, your takes on it, but some of you guys like, hey, I love listening to this show on my way back from work, or, you know, as I'm doing this, as I'm doing that. So thank you so much for watching and supporting. It really does mean a lot. And if you got to this point in the video, consider leaving a like, consider subscribing, or double checking if you are subscribed, or if you're not subscribed and you know you're not, maybe consider it, just because, hey, like, you seem to keep coming back. I don't know. But that's everything from me. So again, I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Lanterns, Kryptonians, and everything in this video in the next video. Goodbye.